Google Street View is coming to Germany! Or if you prefer, oh no, Google Street View is coming to Germany! Yes, if you've ever used Street View in Europe, you may have noticed that this country is mostly non-existent, with only a few of the bigger cities covered. Except that even there, it's not great. Most of the images are hopelessly outdated, with some of them as much as 15 years old, and a lot of them look like this. Basically, Street View is not very useful if you want to use it to find your way around Germany. I mean, it's almost as if Germans have a pathological fear of having their houses photographed. Well, if you thought that, then you're actually not far from the truth. It's not really difficult to understand why Germans might be suspicious of anything that looks like mass surveillance. First, the Gestapo, and then in East Germany, the Stasi, used various forms of surveillance to keep citizens in line. If you grew up in Karl-Marx-Stadt in the 1980s and you failed to adequately denounce Americans as evil capitalists, the chances are the government would from then on be watching your every move. Okay, but what does this have to do with Street View? Well, combine this level of paranoia with tabloid journalism, and you have half the ingredients necessary to make the populace believe in a conspiracy theory. Bear in mind that up until this point, there had never been anything quite like Street View. Google had to invent the technology to allow it not only to take all the necessary photographs, but also to stitch them together and get them to interact with a map. So this was completely new, and people didn't really understand the technology or what it could and could not do. And that's where the tabloids jumped in and basically told everyone that Street View was a gift for criminals who could use it to plan their burglaries. Now, of course, you can't see anything more on Street View than you can from, say, the top deck of a double-decker bus, but this was still enough to get people seriously worried about a possible invasion of privacy. And it got to the point that the state of North Rhine-Westphalia considered an actual ban. The discussions reached the most bizarre heights when some people came to believe that Street View would give us a live feed of every inch of public road in the country. Google promised to blur out any property if the owner requested it, and was promptly flooded by thousands and thousands of requests. Google complied, but this then provoked a rather unexpected backlash. You see, it's quite common in Europe generally to see buildings with shops and businesses on the ground floor and residential apartments above them. In some cases, when landlords requested Google to blur out their properties, the storefronts were also blurred out. Which was not great news for the store owners, who saw Street View as free advertising. They wanted their shops to be visible. But this is not what killed off Street View in Germany. The final straw came when it was discovered that Google Street View cars were picking up people's Wi-Fi signals and saving a lot of private information. This happened everywhere, not just in Germany, but of course in Germany it met with a public that was already deeply suspicious, and courts that didn't buy Google's explanation that it was a mistake, and also didn't care that the data it recorded was unencrypted. That does not constitute consent. And so Google decided that Germany was just too much effort, and progress on Street View stopped. The car still drove around collecting data to keep the standard maps updated, but Street View became frozen in time. Well, almost. A few years ago, Google started accepting submissions from members of the public who, of course, were not going around snooping on people's internet activities. This allowed Google to update a few of their images and even to add a couple of new places. I found these images from the town of Herrenberg, taken earlier this year. And now, all of a sudden, Google has announced that later this year it will be making a second attempt to put Germany on the map. Now, the company itself has tried to imply that this is because people keep asking it why German Street View is so useless, but we all know the real reason. Recently, Apple's rival Look Around service launched in Germany without any of these problems and has been very successful. After all of this time, previous requests to blur out buildings will not be honoured, and so landlords will have to submit new requests if they wish to. And so it remains to be seen whether Germans are any more comfortable with the idea now than they were 15 years ago. Street View cars were picking. A few years ago, Google started accepting snooping on people's accepting submissions from members of the public.